So how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How about you?
I've been doing pretty good. Wrote another blog post, so I'm happy about that.
Oh, yeah, dude. I imported that.
Oh, wow. It should only take you about 30 seconds to read.
Oh, really? Really? Oh, I did.
Yeah, it's like... Yeah, open it up.
Yeah,
I mean, it's like no words.
I was pretty busy, so I just straight up imported it. 0% privacy, of course.
Oh, thank you. I'm very flattered. But the reason for that blog post is because I've been thinking a lot about this weird thing, which is when you're using a spaced repetition system or some kind of thing like that, it often feels less effective than other kinds of learning. And that's like known in the research. For whatever reason, students, when they're asked to rate their own progress, they rate it as less when they're using something like spaced repetition, even though it's obviously more effective.
Right.
And there's a weird thing about that, but a lot of people who use that know that that's a problem. I mean, people talk about that all the time. Oh, it doesn't feel like it's working, this kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept thinking, why is that? And I came to the conclusion, it's partly because it's gradual, and gradual progress, I say this in the post, gradual progress is easy to miss. Whereas if you're cramming or things like this, that progress is hard to miss because it's so immediate that you can instantly tell, oh, this is working. I have information in my brain that I didn't used to have, and therefore it's working. But I think another component of it, which is really weird, and I think it's the same with the acquisition of skill and like expertise. A lot of it occurs subconsciously, so you never get the satisfaction of going, okay, I now know it. I am now good at it. There just comes a point where you have internalized it. It's almost like it becomes part of who you are, and so you don't even notice it. You don't get the benefit of going, I didn't know that, and now I do, and now I do. It just becomes part of you, like gradual weight loss. People who lose weight, and this is like an analogy I made in the. I didn't say it, but I alluded to it in the post. People who lose weight and don't take progress photos often don't notice if they're losing weight because it happens so gradually that it just becomes who you are, who you see every day in such a slow way that you don't even notice it. You know what I mean about that?
I definitely know what you mean. I think I've read maybe some of the research about students, their sort of their confidence in their own abilities after using like a massed method like cramming versus a spaced method like spaced repetition, right? And it's kind of interesting that it seems to be pretty consistent that people feel like they have learned better after doing massed rather than spaced. And one of the reasons I think that may be is that cramming sort of gives you a fluency in the knowledge that spaced repetition doesn't give you, perhaps. And while that fluency may be like transient or temporary, it still gives you sort of a momentary peak in your memory, sort of, if you know what I mean. It's similar to the sense, since we're talking about making sort of weight loss analogies, fitness analogies, it's sort of like how powerlifters or weightlifters, they'll peak before a competition. And so their strength at that point in time, just before a competition, doesn't really represent the state of their body and their strength throughout the year. It's just that one specific point in time. And obviously, in order to achieve that, they've had to sacrifice a lot of other things, like just being generally fit or fit in other areas, like cardiovascular fitness. If you're just focusing on this one thing, you're only good at that one specific domain. I think it might possibly be the same in memory, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, the one analogy I made explicitly in the article was, if you stay up all night before a test to get all that info in your brain, I had heard of this phenomenon of actors lifting weights right before they record a scene so they get a pump so their muscles look bigger.
Genius.
And, that nobody thinks that's going to last. Everybody knows in just a few minutes his muscles are going to go back down. But,
yeah, exactly.
You still do it because it looks better. And it's the same thing with cramming. That's not going to last. It never does. So whatever fluency gain you think you're getting, maybe you have it for a few minutes, or a day or whatever it is, but it surely doesn't last. And
Yeah.
I don't know. It just sucks because you would like for the most effective thing to feel the most effective.
Yeah.
Therefore, you have the most chance of continuing with it. Because when something doesn't feel effective, it's harder to continue.
Exactly. In fact, I think this effect is like ubiquitous everywhere you look. Like, if you look at advertising, fast food advertisements, they're going to like take that burger and put it in its best angle, just straight out the fryer, you know?
Right.
On Instagram.
And some of that food is not even edible on the ads.
Yeah, exactly, right? They use like Elmer's glue or something for the
yeah,
the milk.
some garbage like that.
Yeah, it's insane. So you couldn't even, this stuff is inedible. It doesn't represent reality at all. One thing that I thought was interesting is about progress pictures. I guess progress pictures can be sort of gamed as well. Like you can do your push-ups just before you take them to make yourself look 3% better, you know, in that progress picture. But I wonder if we can find an equivalent of a progress picture in learning, okay? But we also want it to be something that you can't game. So what sort of metric or sort of test could we use to assess whether your learning has been successful without it being sort of gameable?
So that is something that I've been thinking about a ton. And I left it totally empty in the post. I just ended the post with find better progress metrics. Because I don't actually know the solution to the problem.
Right.
And I was hoping that people would talk to me about it because I want to talk about it. I want to see if there's a way to get around it. And I have a hint of a solution, which is it's nothing to do, and I have more than one potential solution, but this solution has nothing to do with the software. It's an observation that I had made, or that a bunch of us had made over the years, which is that when you have acquired knowledge through spaced repetition, and maybe in particular incremental reading, although I don't know that it's restricted to that, and then you have this phenomenon where you don't think you know it that well, but then you get engaged in a conversation about it, and you find yourself knowing the details and just saying the facts that you know. And I think I talked with Arya about this, and he would say, "Oh, that's exactly my experience. I have the sensation of being surprised by my knowledge when in conversation." So I have an idea that conversing with people about the things you've learned, or I guess maybe writing could be a substitute, although I think it works less well because you're the only person there.
Yeah.
But I think a conversation about things you've learned is a good way to reveal your knowledge and understanding in a way that you hadn't crystallized for whatever reason.
Yeah, I think actually recently I've been writing up a bunch of notes I made on paper into SM, and I think one of the notes I made was like using conversations with interesting people as a way to understand which topics you should prioritize or something. And what you said about sort of realizing that you've made progress, or that when you have a conversation with someone, I feel like it's like the same idea. Like just engaging people in conversation is a really good way to both reveal what you do know and reveal what you should probably go and learn to make yourself not look like a fool. You know?
Yeah.
But also I think that it can be generalized to pretty much any form of like creative output. So writing, programming, podcasts, blogs, you know, anything where you're taking your ideas and like releasing them into the world, into the marketplace of ideas, and seeing how well they do. I feel like that's the realest form of feedback that you can get, right? So I feel like actually now I've been moving more and more to trying to create some sort of creative output for everything. For all sorts of input that I put into SM, there has to be some sort of output. That's sort of how I feel, for it to be most effective.
Yeah, I've been way leaning into that as well. I think writing, and I think I've said this over and over, I think writing is vitally important for that reason. I mean, something about writing or being in conversation, you're confronted with the true nature of your understanding. Something about just thinking, it's not the same. Like, you can delude yourself into thinking that you understand it, but when you try to put it in words, It doesn't work unless you actually do understand it. So there's something really interesting about that. So I totally agree. All forms of creative output can be a good measure, or like just a way to test your own understanding. Because that's the big downside of spaced repetition. Most of it is you seeing the answer and going, yes, I know that, no, I didn't. Nobody else is grading you. It's just you.
Yeah, exactly.
But one other thing I was interested in, and I'll bring up Michael Nielsen again because we're obligated to every episode.
Yeah.
We actually have a contract with him. Yeah. We have to bring him up every episode. But I heard him on a podcast, and he's a physicist, and he was talking about how when you read a paper in a new field you're not familiar with or whatever it is, at first you don't really understand it. You're sort of stumbling your way through, and then you've read a sufficient number of papers within that field, and you get some intuition about, oh, that's where the important paragraph is going to be, or, oh, nothing else really matters except for this, sentence or two, like this is where the meat of the paper is, or whatever. And he says, he was saying, it's not a good feeling. I mean, it's nice that you have that, but because it occurs subconsciously, you never get that single moment in time, like I was saying, where you go from not understanding to understanding. So it's just kind of a sad thing. And I don't know. I wish there was a more crystallized measure of learning progress, because I think it would way increase the likelihood that people stick with more difficult and effective approaches.
Definitely.
Because it's just hard to stay motivated when you don't think you're making progress.
Yeah, that's true. But at the same time, I feel like it's just so easy to game these metrics, and that's true of like any metric. I think there's like a law, like maybe Campbell's law, Goodhart's law. There's something called
it's Goodhart's, I think.
Yeah, Goodhart's law, and then there's something called like the Cobra effect about killing cobras or something in India. I don't know if you've heard that one.
Oh, I haven't heard that one.
Never mind. It's not that interesting. Anyway, but all these metrics have a way to be gamed. So I don't know. I kind of really like the output as a way of measuring how well you're doing, basically. Something else I'm interested in is the ratio between input and output in learning. So the good thing about input is that it gives you more knowledge, right? And it's also kind of cheaper in like the time cost sense, in that you can, especially with incremental reading, you can do lots of reading in a day, and it's not like mentally exhausting in the same way that output is. But at the same time, you can't just do 100% input all the time, because then you'll never create anything and all your knowledge will just sit in your brain and go to waste, right? So do you think there's a way to almost like creating a fitness program for yourself, right? So in a fitness program, you'll have like different ratios between intensity and what do they call it, like volume in weightlifting, right? And so some days you'll do loads of volume, sometimes you'll do loads of weight instead. Can we draw an analogy with like learning? Could you do some days with lots of input, some days with lots of output? Is it best to just keep them 50-50? How do you think?
That's an interesting question. And one thing I've been wondering about a lot lately, and I actually emailed Waz about this, was how much time to spend alone with your thoughts. Basically, I read this book called Digital Minimalism, and it was written by Cal Newport. And in there, he takes a definition of solitude from these other guys who wrote a book about solitude. And the definition is something approximating time spent alone with your thoughts where you're not receiving the input created by someone else. So you could technically be alone with your thoughts in line for a coffee, as long as you're not consuming input from someone else. And the benefit of that is that that's when you get to be creative. And of course, you can be creative while consuming output. It's just less likely, probably. And so I've been wondering a lot about that. And then sort of in line with that, I cannot believe I'm going to mention this again. Andy Matushak.
Yes.
Andy Matushak. He has this process.
I think we get a bonus every time we mention him 10 times. We must be at 10 by now. Check depositable to Golden Nuggets podcast. Thanks, Andy.
Andy Matushak has this process where he writes for 3 hours every morning with no input.
Oh, damn.
He literally doesn't even go on the internet.
Wow.
He doesn't allow himself to use the internet at all in the morning until he's finished with his writing, because he has this notion that it's hard to hear yourself think. And he wasn't exaggerating. He says for him, an hour is not enough time alone with his own thoughts to really tune in to his own original voice. And he's instead just parroting things other people had said to him. So I don't have an answer to your question in terms of like a pure ratio, but I do think it's very important to deliberately have time in your day where you're not consuming stuff. You're just trying to organize your own thoughts and have creative ideas and get those out, get them on paper or wherever you write your notes. And I think that's vitally important, although I don't have an idea about a ratio.
That's really interesting. Yeah, like I said, I think on episode 1, we need to get him on so we can interrogate him on all of these things.
Yeah.
3 hours to me seems like a lot. It seems like that would be really exhausting to me, but it seems to work for him. And I wonder if he is like consistent with that. Does he do that literally every day? And has he done that every day for a while, or is this something he's done recently? Does he plan to change it? Lots of questions I'm quite interested in.
Yeah, to my understanding, he's done 3 hours a day, every day, for like a year at least.
Wow, my God.
And so, yeah, I don't know how long he plans to continue it, but it seems to be working for him. He's written thousands of those notes. So
yeah, I think maybe it was Stephen King. He was just one of those guys who didn't believe in motivation or something, so he would just force himself to write like 20,000 words a day or something, some absurd number. Yeah, he was really prolific. It might be.
Yeah, he writes 4.5 hours a day, I think.
Wow. Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah, it might be really interesting to look at the lives of people who are really prolific writers or researchers and see how they structure their day. Because right now I can't really fathom doing so, like, writing so much. Like Fowl is the same way. He was talking about his do you remember how much he wrote?
I don't know. He wrote a novel that was like really long. I don't recall how long it was. But the part that interested me about what he does is that he doesn't seem to think it's taxing at all. For him, he's cavalier about it. Oh yeah, I wrote 10,000 words. That's okay. Like he doesn't seem to think that it's anything. It's like doing something normal.
Perhaps over time it just becomes less mentally taxing to do that. Did you find that with programming?
Yeah, I mean, it must. Well, with programming, it's weird because, I don't know, you get the easier stuff done faster, but then you always find that ceiling of, like, doing things in a way that is so efficient or in the fewest lines or whatever it is. I always feel like you're increasing the quality of your code, so you're always finding a new ceiling, and it's always equally as taxing. I mean, what do you think?
I do think it got slightly easier over time, but like you said, the things you're focusing on once you've been programming for like a year or whatever, and then 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, that you're always pushing the ceiling, the limits of what you're capable of. So I suppose it never really gets easier. You're always grinding against some difficult problem. Yeah.
How terrible! What a pessimistic idea. Never gets easier.
Yeah.
Well, it's like working out. I mean, if you're not constantly finding your edge, you're not doing it right.
Right. Yeah. So to be improving, you've got to be sort of struggling, I suppose.
Yeah, which is it's an annoying thing, but it's just the way of the world, I guess.
Yeah. So,
how much time do you spend writing now, would you say?
Oh, writing?
Yeah.
I spent quite a bit the past few days just because I was writing up all those notes. So I'd say, I don't know, I should know because I'm supposed to be tracking all my time, but, I would say roughly 3 hours a day, but it was only because
3 hours a day.
right. But what I was doing was literally just typing up notes that I'd already written. So
Oh, okay.
and maybe elaborating like a little bit here and there. So it wasn't
Right.
that taxing. But it's definitely something I want to get into some more. Like I mentioned that I'd done all the infrastructure for the blog. I just still need to write a post.
Dude, please write a post. I want to see one.
Oh yeah. Well, one thing, one way of sort of motivating myself to start was thinking about ways of making writing more collaborative or interesting. Just the process, making the process more interesting. I was thinking of like an incremental writing group, right? So in the SMA Wiki Discord, people have been doing...
So is that why you're starting incremental email?
Yeah. I feel like that's a really good outlet as well. So the idea behind the incremental writing group, it was sort of inspired by what I saw lots of people doing in the SMA Wiki Discord. So people were starting study groups, and they'd study with their camera on, right? Well, not the camera, they'd be streaming their screen, and they'd study for like 30 minutes or some interval, and then they'd take a break, move into the other channel, and then like discuss what they did or just have a chat for a bit. And I thought what would be really interesting is if you spent like 30 minutes doing incremental writing, not necessarily on the same article, and not like rigidly, like you're not forced to just sit there and write for 30 minutes, but maybe you section off a part of your day like Andy does, and you say, for this amount of time, I'm going to do some writing. And so you go into the Discord, you go into that room, you do your writing for 30 minutes, and then you move into the chat room and you can like share what you wrote and ask for feedback if you want to. Not if you just feel like you want to keep it private, but you can like ask for ideas and feedback, and so you can get this sort of a tighter feedback loop than you would get doing just normal writing, where you write entirely alone and maybe you ask for feedback on drafts or whatever. But I feel like this way you just get like more concentrated feedback at every stage. You could be asking for feedback. I don't know if that's helpful or useful. I just thought it'd be like an interesting experiment.
Yeah, I definitely think that's interesting, and it sort of ties in because you started incremental email, right? Is it for a similar reason?
Yeah, I just feel that Discord isn't a good medium for discussing like complex ideas or ideas that need to be developed over time, or ideas where you need input from a lot of people. But I don't know, Discord just kind of sucks for that. There's no threading or anything. It's difficult to catch people up on ideas that I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree with what you're saying. And the study room group writing idea, it reminds me, sometimes I'll email Waz and he'll say to me, "Oh, you planted a seed," or something like this. Yeah. Basically saying something you said made me go off and do something else. And I think that's a really useful thing. And that's a huge value add from talking with other people about ideas. Like, you can inspire them, they can inspire you, and it can totally change the nature of what you're doing, or give you a totally new idea. And I think that's really useful. Although I do wonder how many people like have an actual writing process. I just mean in a more general sense, I guess. It seems like most people don't write at all.
I think the number of people at least interested in writing might be higher in the SMA Discord, just because they've read Waz's articles and they've read about incremental writing. I don't know how many follow through, but at least the interest is there, I think. So I don't know. I feel like loads of people could be persuaded to start writing, even if it was just really simple stuff, you know?
Yeah, but and probably the group would help a lot with that.
Exactly, yeah. Seeing other people in there. It's just like how the SMA Wiki voice chats started. When do you want to introduce it? The way it started?
Oh, well, I feel stupid because it's not like I'm taking credit for it. I'm not saying that I started it at all. I would never say that. But I decided one day I'm just gonna get in the voice channel and wait until someone joins. Because someone must join eventually, right? And it happened. It worked. And that ever since that day, people have been joining the group, the voice chat regularly. And it was just because of that. Even though the voice chat had been around for a long time, no one had ever used it. So I just decided I'll just stay in there. And it worked. Everybody's used it since then.
Yeah, so just that one small action was enough to totally change. It was like enough to change like the culture, if you know what I mean, of the Discord. I'm serious, like in a really positive way as well, because like I feel like that was the starting point of the big group discussions, just loads of like the study group itself. That was birthed, as a result of your initial idea. It's actually really interesting.
Go ahead.
Oh, it's actually really interesting how easy it is to change the culture of a small community, because since it's so small, people react to ideas really quickly, and ideas spread throughout the community very quickly. So I think right now there's probably under 500 people in the SMA Wiki Discord, and so it's kind of there's loads of different ways that can be pulled. It can be pulled in many different directions, the community and just the atmosphere. And I feel like recently it's been kind of a golden age, because all of the different things and the different activities, the different groups that have sort of been organized around it are really positive. I remember...
Yeah, it's amazing.
Sorry, you go ahead.
No, I want you to continue. I don't want to mess up that thread.
Sure, yeah. I remember recently we were having a discussion, I think, with Alexi. Sorry, Alexi. We were talking about how it can be difficult to maintain the quality of discussion in Discords, right? In Discord channels, especially as they grow larger, and the problem seems to happen really fast. And it happens right at this stage, right? So the SMA Wiki Discord, 500 people. I think by the time you have 1,000 people, there could be a real problem just with trash content being spammed constantly. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I feel like recently, perhaps it was like too soon to get worried about that, because all I've seen recently is, for the most part, really high quality discussions. And yeah, I don't know. How do you feel?
Yeah, I mean, well, I mostly agree. I think a lot of the discussions are valuable. But it's a really interesting thing, because like you say, there can be so much garbage. And of course, that's not an insult to anybody. People are new and they have different interests at the time or different areas of struggle, and that's fine.
Yeah.
I'm not saying anybody is superior to anyone else in terms of what they bring to the conversation. Although some people obviously are, just for the record. But the funny thing is, you would think, even if there were a lot of garbage content, there would still be good content, but it gets washed out, and the people contributing the good content no longer want to contribute it because no one joins in. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's a downfall. But in regards to changing the culture specifically, it's so funny because I sometimes think it's so weird how such a small action in life can have such positive effects. I mean, when you really break it down, all that happened, and it didn't have to be me. It literally could have been anybody. But all that happened was I clicked one button to join the general voice, and I just didn't click another button. That's all that happened. That's the only action I took. And think of all the changes. I mean, I won't get into every detail now, but a lot of stuff in my life has changed for the positive as a result of this Discord, and I think largely as a result of the voice channel aspect of it. And it's all because of that single small action. And to me, that's amazing that such results can come from the smallest things in life.
Yeah. That's a really beautiful point. I like that. And also I like the cliffhanger of not telling people what you've got from it. So you have to listen to the latest episodes to,
yeah, just continue listening.
Yeah.
And maybe I'll mention it.
Oh yeah, another thing I was going to say is there are certain topics on the internet that will attract trash content and trash discussion, right? So like politics, you're just guaranteed to just get terrible content. And there are a bunch of others, like I think maybe they're grouped under one heading, which is like the culture war topics, I think, in the rationality community, right? So just the topics where you look at them and it's just gonna, people are very there'll be a heated debate and no conclusion, basically. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. It's pointless. And the problem is most people, even though they want to pretend, they are not open to changing their mind.
Yeah, exactly.
Everybody wants to believe that about themselves. I'm open to changing my mind. And it would be great if you were. And I try to be. But maybe I'm not in the way that I would wish that I was. And I don't think most people are. At least that's been my observation.
Yeah.
And a lot of people treat ideas as ideologies. You don't have to stick with something even if you discover something is wrong about it. You know?
Yeah.
Like when I was a lot younger, I would have an opinion. And I just want to be clear here. I was pretty young with this, so
okay.
I hope I've changed since then. Although maybe not. But I would have an opinion, and then I would be in the middle of a discussion, and I would suddenly realize this opinion is breaking down. It just doesn't make sense, and I wouldn't have the fortitude to just say, you know what, that was a stupid opinion. It's totally broken down, and now I'm on your side. Like it would be so hard for me to move past that barrier of just saying, okay, my opinion was totally wrong. And so I would just get stuck defending an opinion I no longer even held. Yeah. It's ridiculous. And I hope, to be honest, that my opinions keep changing. I hope that I hold no belief so sacred, you know?
Yeah. It's
that I don't change it or listen to evidence.
Yeah, and it's sort of a callback to what we were saying earlier with discussion, sort of causing you to, like discussion with smart people, allowing you to sort of change your mind and realize where your ideas were wrong. So yeah, it sounds like you've matured, you know?
I hope so. But that's one of the reasons I think it's so valuable to have a chat with people. It's like you're reality testing your ideas and you're getting information you didn't have because obviously everybody knows something you don't know, usually. And so having discussions, I think, as long as you genuinely do try to not remain so attached to any particular idea and not identify yourself with that idea. And that way you can be movable on all these things because we don't know what the truth is on a lot of these things. A lot of it's subjective and who knows? Just be a little bit more fluid about that stuff and maybe in a few years' time you'll have more ideas and better developed ideas that are closer to objective reality than you had before. Whereas it kind of disappoints me, and maybe I'm in this category without knowing it, but it disappoints me to see people sticking with ideas that are just like part of their identity, even though they might not be well supported by the facts.
Oh, one other thing I thought was funny was that while I was sort of thinking about this, I sort of thought about other communities that have topics that just attract low quality conversation, right? And then I thought about sort of the learning community in particular, and I think there are two subjects that attract low quality conversation that perhaps like other communities don't have this problem, only really in learning. So the first one was nootropics. I feel like that one is just guaranteed to be a shit show. And then also I think sleep as well, because you can get like the arguments between like polyphasic, monophasic and biphasic and stuff.
Well, and I think to a larger degree just learning in general has this character. Like people suggest all kinds of really like weird stuff. People talk about how do you read more books or whatever.
Speed reading, photo reading. Shout out to George.
Photo reading, all that garbage. And I remember I watched one of these how to read more books videos. And the guy said, I don't even like reading. I like having read. And I thought, that doesn't even make sense. And that's no insult to that guy. I'm sure he's a fine lad. I don't know anything about him. But it was just such a weird thing to me. Like, you don't like the process of learning, then what's the point? Like, people have all kinds of advice like that. Oh, just do it in a Pomodoro, or force yourself to do it, or whatever it is. It's all kinds of weird stuff like that.
Yeah.
But anyway, the polyphasic sleep thing, people still talk about that now. It's like, oh, how can I get away with more sleep or less sleep? And
Yeah.
I don't know. I just don't think it's good. I think it's long-term damaging, and who knows whether it increases your chances of getting Alzheimer's disease or something like that.
Yeah.
Which is, by the way, for a person who cares about learning, that might be the worst thing ever.
Yeah. I can think of no worse disease to get if you're really into learning, you know?
Yeah, which is, by the way, maybe another reason to use Super Memo, because apparently too much learning can cause Alzheimer's disease, dude, or something like that. Have you read those WAS articles?
I've not read it. Like, see, that's the kind of article I just avoid, because I'm just not so interested in the debates about things that I feel like either it's just not going to reach a conclusion, or just I would never believe that more learning would cause Alzheimer's anyway. So why would I read it, if you know what I mean? But is there anything interesting?
I only glanced over it. I don't even know the details.
Okay. Yeah. So it just sounds like an absurd proposition to make, you know?
I don't know. I think Woz does say that. He says something like you have to maintain, I hope I'm not getting this wrong, but you have to maintain good, like, learning hygiene so that you don't there's some negative effect of forcing memories into your brain in a weird way. I don't know exactly what he said. I should read the article before I speak on it.
Okay.
I'm probably getting some details wrong here, but anyway, just the core of your point, which is that there are many things surrounding learning which attract low quality discussion. I totally agree with that, but hopefully incremental reading and spaced repetition, the quality of discussion is on the upturn.
Yeah. Oh, actually, there was one more thing that I thought was interesting, that in Discord, you can now do a slow mode. So you can limit the number of messages that get sent to a channel by an individual. I thought that was really interesting.
Oh, that's excellent.
Yeah, so then, in my mind, that almost makes it more like email, because I guess there's nothing really stopping you from sending loads of messages through email. It's just it takes a little bit more effort, so it just prevents like people just spamming you with just crap over and over. You know? It's almost like I wish there was a way to just go back fully to like if you just made it as inconvenient as possible, so that it was almost like writing a letter to someone, so that the message would take ages to arrive. You'd have to spend actually quite a lot of time writing down the address, figuring out all that out and stuff. I wonder if that would be a cool experiment, actually, to see the effect on what sort of messages people post if they know that their message is going to like sit and just it won't post until like 7 days have passed or something. Because then
that would be excellent, dude.
Yeah, I feel like you eliminate a lot of the messages that just have very little value beyond like 10 minutes, you know? A lot of people just posting like, can you read the manual for me, basically. Those get eliminated.
Can you do this Google search for me?
Yeah, exactly.
But in regards to what you were talking about email and how it's difficult to send them, it reminded me, when I first started emailing with Woz, I had emailed him a bunch of times. And I put a little note in one of them like, hey, sorry for emailing you so much. And he responded to that, and he said something like, you can't overwhelm an incremental reader. And I thought that was really interesting.
Incremental readers.
Now you'll know because you're doing incremental email.
Yeah. Well, I still need to set it up. Apparently that's a pain, but yeah. I'll get around to it.
You have to edit some DLL or something.
Oh, God. Okay.
Or, no, some registry file, I guess.
Oh, nice. I'd expect nothing less at this point.
Oh, man. All right, maybe we should end it there.
Yeah. I feel like we talked about quite a lot of interesting stuff today. Yeah, it's super hot here.
Yeah.
I'm like dying.
Oh man, that sucks.
All right,
All right.
let's end it. This was fun.
Yeah, definitely.